Hi, David. Really nice to meet you this evening, and really looking forward to the show tonight. Could you tell us a bit about your character Fleetwood and his background?
Okay, so my character Fleetwood is an ex-army Vietnam vet, so sort of been around 27 years old, born and raised in Savannah, went off to war, was injured in combat, came back to Savannah, and with Queen, decided to leave Savannah and move to New York to pursue the big lights, bright lights, big city, and all that it has to offer. But things don't really go according to plan. Spoiler alert.
So, I think a lot of the audience like to know sometimes, how do actors get into these really kind of deep roles, especially if you've been a war veteran? How do you go about doing that?
Essentially, it all comes down, well, personally, I just feel it comes down to immersing yourself as much as you can in the world. Obviously, there's lots of documentaries about that sort of period of time, lots of accounts, so there's so much you can read. And, I watch as many movies as possible. I watch sort of Born on the 4th of July, which is a great movie about an ex-Vietnam vet, goes over there with the right intentions, which I believe a lot of people did, came back and wasn't really sort of treated in the way that, with care and respect and any of that. And in the end, he sort of finds a path that suits him, but my character becomes much more conflicted, ends up falling into sort of a really dark environment. Drugs are a huge feature in this show and sort of the effect that they can have on various people, especially my character. And there's this sort of really disturbing fact which I found out, which is that 90% of ex-army people who fought in the Vietnam War, a lot of them developed drug addictions while they were fighting. Okay. And 90% of those that were treated for those drug addictions in the US became relapsed. Whereas the sort of, there was only a sort of a 5% relapse rate if you were treated, in Asia. So that was one of those things that suddenly made it really real, what my character was going through. So there were lots of accounts and made it very easy to kind of sort of get a handle on it.
Okay. And so what's the difference between the way men and women are actually portrayed in this show?
Well, you're talking sort of 1970s, like 1980s. So there's already a much greater sort of economic, social kind of equality divide between men and women. It's still sort of massively weighted towards the patriarchal society at that point. So this piece really, really reflects that naturally anyway. So, and as, I'm sure, people have said, I'm sure you'll find tonight, it displays a very real slice of what that time was like. So within the piece, you see men in positions of power, very much sort of preying upon women. And you see, there are some strong characters, but the women, they have the whole piece is about their journey towards this strength. And, it was very hard for women back then. It still is hard for women now. But, there is a greater sway towards that. But in this piece, you really sort of see how a woman who is sort of beaten down and really against the wall can sort of rise up and through. And that's what makes it such a triumphant story in the end.
And so working with the director, Michael Blakemore, how did he kind of direct the show to keep these kind of gritty and dark elements in without it becoming like, kind of cheesy musical?
Well, the wonderful thing about Michael is he just has this real feel for the moment. So, he intrinsically knows exactly how he wants it played. And he's not interested in glitz and glamour. He's not interested in high kicks and razzle-dazzle. He really, really just wants to get you to the core of what the scene is about, what the piece is about. So he basically just got us to get out of our own way. There are so many shows out there at the moment that employ sort of effects and this and that, and people are overblown. But especially in this space, in the Southwark Playhouse, is really intimate. So he just said, just go back to the text, just focus on what these characters are doing, what they want in this moment. So to keep that grit, and because the material is so dark, it is so gritty, and it's so real. You read any account of this particular sort of time and this culture, this pimps and hookers culture that was in and around Times Square in the 1970s, 1980s. You're playing these real characters. So you just go back to the text, you look at the relationships, and you focus on what you really want and what your dream is, and how your character, how the person you're playing wants to get what they want.
Okay. And so finally, have you got any words to the West End producers out there that can buy this show and take it around London?
Okay, well, I mean, the material is all there. Yeah. It's a fantastic show. We're all surprised. Everyone who comes and sees the show is so surprised it hasn't been in the West End, in the UK before. You know, Cy Coleman's music is incredible. You know, everyone goes out humming the tunes. They could all be standalone. It could be done as a concert version, for goodness sakes. The whole cast is incredibly talented. I can honestly say, you know, I've never had the pleasure of working with such a talented bunch of people. So you've got a ready-made production. Michael's done a fantastic job. It doesn't cost anything. You can stage it anywhere because we've got the band on top of the stage pretty much, so you can get it into any theatre. The cast are brilliant. Music's brilliant. The material's brilliant. And we're working for peanuts here. So, I mean, you know, it doesn't cost a lot to get us. So, yeah.
I think that's good enough, yeah. You buy this show, West End producers.